Hi, welcome to the continuation of my discussions with Dr. Jasper Ayelazuno about the problems of democracy in Africa. Okay, so in other words, we should focus on the kind of political education that lets the electorate know that election day is actually the easiest part
Yeah,
of
exactly.
democracy.
Exactly.
It is only the
Exactly.
beginning. That
Yeah.
after elections is when the work of the electorate should start.
To start.
When it should immediately start, you know, joining forces across ethnicity, across religion,
Tribes.
focus on their communal needs, and then find ways to collectively express what they need, and challenge the people they have put there to fulfill
Be
the promise
answerable to them.
they have made.
Yeah, to be
So
answerable to
there
them.
should be more money. There should be more emphasis, more effort. And because a lot of funders from abroad right now are funding, get more women into elected offices and things like that. It is important that we have as
It,
many voices there as possible.
it,
But what
it,
kind of people and how do the masses know their responsibilities and actually start from now to work towards, okay, when we vote for this person and they get there, this is how we are going to insist. This is what we are going to insist on. So that it's not
you,
always business as usual.
you said it just the way it should be. Election is just the beginning. Of the election day, the job of holding them accountable begins the
Yeah.
following day.
Mm.
And you are right in saying that there's the need for education. How just like the Western countries sponsored think tanks, NGOs to go about, educating people about democracy in its procedural form, like human rights, also in its procedural forms, like the way dictatorship is bad, and for that matter, democracy is the best way to go. That part of the job has been done. Those were in the 1980s and the 1990s. We have moved beyond that. We have transitioned to democracy. What needs to be done now is the same funding should be flowing to think tanks and advocacy group, and then sensitization to be done by these NGOs who will, instead of saying that, oh, this voting is your right, say that, educate people that after voting, the job begins that you don't allow the MP to just come, ride his big car, come and sit down, talk, and go away. You ask the person questions. You write letters.
Yeah.
You come together. It doesn't matter whether he's your party person or your party MP. You all come together as subalterns because you have the same interests. So you come together. So this education, we are somehow expecting too much from the subaltern. We expect them to know all this. They can't know all this. It's not elitist to try to educate them that democracy means more than elections. Actually, you should be protesting. You should be on the streets. If the president comes, instead of lining up to welcome him when you haven't eaten the last night, when you don't have water to drink, you are drinking from the pond. In the case of where I'm sitting now, your children don't have clothes to wear. I mean, why do you line up to welcome the president? You have to go out with rotten eggs and be throwing at his car. That is the sort of education that should be made.
Again, I can only draw from my experience as a Nigerian. What we have actually have in place in Nigeria is a system where we have rogue politicians. Our National Assembly, our ministers, in fact, somebody did a computation of how much these people pay themselves, in terms of not just salaries, but sitting allowances, allowance to renovate their houses, their garden, replace their cars every year. And in a country where so many people live below the poverty line, and it's like there's nothing anybody can do to insist that these things change. Somehow your average Nigerian seems overwhelmed, you know.
Exactly.
And I think the being overwhelmed stems from not knowing, you know, how to at a community, start even at your street level, you know, start some kind of collective action and then build, you know, towards, you know, making your voices heard. It's an area that I think we need to pay more attention to.
So, some education has to be done. In the case of Ghana, it is so bad and so unscrupulous on the part of
Yes.
the politicians. They have been able to actually get these subalterns to be fighting themselves based on party lines. So the two parties in Ghana, I describe them as political tribes, because you have the NDC, which has become a tribe. You have the NPP, which has become a tribe, and you know tribal sensibilities. So they have been able to probably socialize or to inject into these subalterns this tribal, political tribalism, which is not based on their original tribes, but based on NDC, NPP tribal divisions. So instead of coming together as one class, the poor, the masses, people suffering the same fate, whether it is NDC that is in power or NPP that is in power, they rather have become members of these political tribes. And that is another very wicked thing that the political class have been able to do to Ghana, is to divide the front of the subaltern class.
Well, the situation in Nigeria is such that people have actually come out to say that while in practice, it looks like we have two dominant parties, that in essence, it is one party. You understand? But they've kind of divided themselves into two groups. You know, they keep recirculating. You see one person decamping from one group to the other, but it's the same set of people who keep coming back into power, either through elections or appointments and so on and so forth. You know, but the fact is that it is just a small group of people, you know, that have access to all the power in the country and control all the resources.
Do I need to tell you that whatever happens in Nigeria has a counterpart in Ghana? It's the same thing that is in Ghana. They keep recycling themselves.
Yes.
The only thing is that to the subaltern classes, they see parties, different parties. But the political class themselves, like you rightly pointed out, actually is one class. They are the same group of class. They have the same class interests. Their style of life is the same. Yes. They understand politics in a new patrimonial sense, like we have discussed. And they are always looking out to satisfy themselves and their families.
And there's no ideological difference.
No ideology comes in here.
This is what one party stands for. This is what the other stands for.
In Ghana, they pretend that, oh, NPP is liberal and NDC is social democrat. It's all lies. They are all, only what matters is that they are a political class. They have captured the state and they are using it to promote their political survival and to enrich themselves and their cronies. That is the bottom line about party politics in Ghana.
Now, when you now look at most of these African states in connection with a global situation, so what role does neoliberal globalization play in the failure of democratic systems in Africa?
Okay, first of all, to be clear, neoliberalism and a particular form of democracy that took root in Africa are connected. This specific model of democracy is called electoral democracy or liberal democracy. It's a very limited notion of democracy, which favors the economic aspect of neoliberalism. And it's not accidental or coincidental that the movement to propagate or to promote electoral democracy came in the late 1980s and early 1990s, because that was the time that neoliberal globalization was ascendant as an economic system governing that was across the globe, that supports free movement of goods, free movement of capital, free market, the opening of economies to Western transnational corporations to invest. These cannot happen when there's no liberal democracy, because liberal democracy means guaranteeing property and promoting free market. Besides that, it is more about the economic system being free, and then a limited liberal democracy in terms of political freedom, where you go and vote. It doesn't go further than that. It doesn't.
When you said it's about the economic system being free for who? For the masses or for the superpowers?
Certainly being free for the transnational corporations that are coming to Nigeria, that are coming to Ghana, and mainly going to the extractive sector, that is mining and oil. So, I mean, liberal democracy or the electoral democracy allows this form of accumulation, because once you are a liberal democracy, you work with the rule of law, independence of the judiciary, you obey private property. When you sign a contract with any transnational corporation, you are supposed to, execute it. It won't be like a dictator who can decide to say, "Go to hell. I'm not going to obey it." So actually, the liberal form of democracy fits very well. It's actually a kind of a Siamese to a twin to the liberal economic system. They go together. And that's why they do not talk about real substantive economic rights, like survival rights, like providing for the livelihoods of the citizens who are supposed to be the democratic citizens, because that doesn't concern them. What concerns them is really about the liberal economic system. So you can see that liberalism and democracy are not the same. It can be liberal as we have it in Africa, but it's not democratic in the sense that the state is not accountable to the people. It's rather accountable to the bourgeois class, the capitalist class, to the those who promoted Western democracy in Africa, that is the Western countries. So it then leaves the gap between political rights and economic rights. Economic rights in terms of being able to live like a human being. Because in the Constitution of Ghana, people are supposed to live with dignity. But where is the dignity when I see every day poor people don't have place of convenience, they are doing open defecation? Where's the dignity when people are roaming in tattered clothing? Where's the dignity when they don't get potable water to drink? Where's the dignity when you go to hospital and you die out of malaria because you don't have money to buy medication? So this is why you have this narrow democracy in Africa. And to go back to the corruption, the political corruption and the neo-patrimonialism, this sort of political system and the new liberal system is not something that is anti-corruption, even though it will be written in the laws that, oh, when a company goes to do a blah, blah, is corrupt and all that. But it's actually, it makes it possible for corruption to happen, because you don't need to carry a bag of money from Nigeria to Switzerland. You only need to do the transaction online. And that kind of transaction online is a purely part of the new liberal system. And the economic system that allows banks to keep secrets is purely a new liberal system that allows banks to accept all these monies without actually questioning where you get the money. It's part of the system. It's part of the new liberal globalization and this liberal democracy that we have in Africa.
Thank you. And so that brings me to my next point, because what all these show is that there is a need for institutions that will serve as checks and balances. You understand?
Yeah.
And but in your writing, you make a distinction between strong institutions and good institutions.
Yeah.
What kind of institutions do we need to have in place to serve as checks against the power of this new liberal globalization agenda that is not favoring the masses?
Yeah. So if you look at institutions, basically institutions are meant to control our selfish interests. You go to a public office, there is the temptation for you to do what? To enrich yourself. But here, that's where institutions kick in. We say that you operate by the rules of the office, which means that the office is a public office. It's not your private property. So that is what institutions are supposed to do. You are supposed to operate within a particular legal or regulatory framework, which allows you not to let your private interests supersede or take to be what is guiding you. So when institutions are good, it means that the regulations in this way are followed. People follow the rules, and which means that if the rule says use government property in the interest of citizens, you are going to comply with that. Oil belongs to the state, so it is the property of citizens. You are going to comply with that. In that case, when institutions work like that, they are good institutions, but you can have strong institutions, which means that they are effective, but they are not actually good. They are effective in what? If, of course, corruption, being able to facilitate corruption is very effective in Africa, because if corruption really works,
And there are
corruption,
strong institutions that
yes,
are upholding corruption.
yes. So when it comes to corruption and abuse of office and being able to cover up, you have the institutions are very effective in doing that. But that doesn't make them good. It would have been good if they were doing the right thing and then being effective at the same time. But to be effective in the wrong way, in the breaking the rules, it means that the institutions actually have been circumvented. The rules of the game have been circumvented. Yet the institutions are effective in making that happen. So we will rather go for good institutions that follow the rules, that make sure that people do the right thing when they are in public office. And then even in doing that, it also means that they then become strong institutions, because they are able, strong in the positive sense, because they are being effective in delivering services to the citizens. They get what they are supposed to get from the state, and politicians are constrained from using state resources for their own interests, and that will then make lead to a situation that institutions are not only good, but they are also effective.
Thank you. Now, before we round up, if you were asked to prescribe a way forward in a point format, what would your prescription be? Way forward,
Yeah.
way out of the situation we found ourselves in most parts of Africa. What would your prescription be?
My prescription, first and foremost, is political agency of the subaltern classes. They are the ultimate owners of power. So once we get them
Show up
interested in checking their political leaders as they are voting, as they do in voting, once we get them aware that you can actually hold these leaders accountable in other ways that are actually effective, more effective than voting, then that is step number one. Step number two, probably, and I say this with a pinch of salt, how do we re-socialize our political class so that they think about politics in a different way, as service rather than the pathway to becoming rich or enriching yourself. One of the things I do as a teacher at the university is that I try to catch them while they are young. So I will advocate that from primary school all the way to university, there must be a sort of acculturation or socialization. It should be part of the syllabus of teaching corruption, how terrible corruption is, what it does to the state, the way it destroys the lives of the citizens. So I will advocate that from primary one all the way to university, there must be a course about civic awareness, civic responsibility, holding leaders accountable. So in that way, you begin to change the mindset of these future politicians, because they are the people who are coming to be what? The leaders of the country. So if you change your mindset about politics, I mean, in Western countries like in Canada, where you are sitting now, they didn't just get up one day and then they became the way they are in terms of the way they understand politics and the way they understand leadership. I mean, I think it took a long period for them to go through all these birth pains of democracy to get the right culture. Because there is the need for the right culture for participatory democracy. Once that culture is not there in the citizens, it's not there in the political class, we are going to have the situation that we have. So I would think these two important things, once these two important things are done, then we'll see a change in attitude, a change in behavior, where political class, before they get to that level, they will be looking to politics as service to the state, the nation. I don't think the Prime Minister of Canada thinks about politics the way we African leaders think about politics. I don't think they do. And that is part of a political culture that has been built over a long, long period. So just planting democracy in this, our context, without this sort of socialization, I mean, we are going to get what we are getting now. So I think these two things are very, very important to me.
Let me try and paraphrase what you just said. It looks like, because we're in for a long haul, you're prescribing two major things.
Yeah.
The first one is getting the electorate to be more hands-on in insisting, on the people they elected into office, working to serve them rather than serve themselves. That looks like what can, something that needs to be done urgently.
Urgently.
And then the civic education, because I'm aware that we do have civic education in the Nigerian educational system, but how
the syllabus.
Yes, how well laid out. I mean, how appropriate the curriculum in the civic education is something else we probably need to work on. Because I know that as a child, I did civic education in school, and then after a while, it dropped off the syllabus, and then recently it's been reintroduced. But we probably need to have a civic education curriculum that runs right from first day in primary school through all the 3 tiers of education. And these must be, the topics in them must be things that are relevant, that they can see and relate to on a daily basis. They must be corruption. Children from low-income families should link the corruption of leaders to their parents' inability to provide well for them. And that way we may be able to prepare a better generation of people who will now turn out to be members of the political class.
Exactly.